Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Cleveland State University, Robert Conrad, and the Payne Fund.
I would like to thank everyone, teachers and students, for coming to today's forum on the Achievement Gap. This forum is presented as part of our youth forum sponsored by AT&T. We appreciate your continued support. My name is Isha Lele, and I'm a junior at Hathaway Brown School in Shaker Heights, Ohio, and I've been part of the Youth Council for 2 years now. The Youth Forum Council here at the City Club brings together students with a passion for current events and activism in their community through dialogue. Every year, a group of committed and engaged high school students will meet to plan and produce City Club forums for other high school students and teachers. Students interested in local and national issues, have diverse points of view, enjoy team projects, and want leadership opportunities are encouraged to join the Youth Forum Council. Today, the Youth Forum is pressing the issue of the achievement gap. There are over 50 million kindergarten through 12th grade students in the United States enrolled in around 129,900 schools across the country, of which 30,900 are private, 5,700 are charter schools, and the remaining schools being public. Whether determined by race, gender, and/or socioeconomic status, various gaps remain in providing quality, accessible education. The Glossary of Education Reform defines the achievement gap as any significant and persistent disparity in academic performance or educational attainment between different groups of students, such as white students and minorities, for example, or students from higher income and lower income households. A growing body of educational research is devoted to studying the underlying causes of achievement gaps and the strategies educators are employing to address them. Some specific causes are, firstly, poverty, income inequality, and lower socioeconomic status contributing to reduced educational opportunities, familial support, good nutrition, healthcare, and other factors that tend to contribute to stronger educational achievement. A second cause can oftentimes be minority status, giving rise to racism, prejudice, stereotyping, ethnic bias, and institutionalized predispositions, such as the tendency in schools to lower academic expectation for minorities or enroll them in less challenging courses that may negatively affect educational achievement. A third cause can oftentimes be lower quality schools, ineffective teaching, student overcrowding, dilapidated school facilities, and inferior educational resources, programs, and opportunities in economically disadvantaged schools and communities. And finally, flawed testing designs that may inadvertently skew scores for certain groups of students over others, especially prevalent in different Common Core standards in the United States. It is within this context that George Golden, Program Director of Closing the Achievement Gap, CTAG, in the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, Gregory C. Hutchings, Jr., Superintendent of Shaker Heights City School District, and Cathy Whitehouse, Principal and Founder of the Intergenerational Schools Kindergarten and 8th Grade, join us today. Ladies and gentlemen, members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, please welcome our panel and moderator, Youth Forum Council member and Cleveland Heights High School senior, Benjamin Schuster.
All right. So as Isha said, my name is Benjamin Schuster, and I am currently a senior at Cleveland Heights High School. Why don't we get to know our panelists? We could start with you.
Good afternoon. My name is George Golden. I am the director of the Closing the Achievement Gap program with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. It's a program that focuses on the assistance of our male students of color population in an effort to increase their potential for graduating from high school and then moving on to post-secondary education or a career of their choice.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Hutchings. I'm the superintendent of Shaker Heights City Schools. It's a first-ranked suburb of Cleveland, and we have about 5,300 students. We aspire to provide all of our students excellence, equity, and exploration, regardless of their socioeconomic background, their family circumstances, or their race. And we are one of only 8 school districts in North America to offer the International Baccalaureate for all students.
Hello, I'm Cathy Whitehouse. I'm a developmental psychologist and educator, and I'm actually no longer principal at the Intergenerational School, but I am the person who designed and founded the Intergenerational School. And I'm pleased to say we now have 3 intergenerational schools in Cleveland. The second and third schools being started because the community came to us and said, we'd like a school of this sort in our community. All 3 of these schools are public charter schools. And I do like to emphasize the public part of that. We're charter schools. We serve any child whose parent chooses to come to our school. And our design is one based on lifelong learning, giving students the time to master instead of moving students along based just on age and time.
All right. Thank you, guys. All right, so it is a well-known fact that test scores are not the full measure of a person's ability. How should we define achievement, and how do you believe it relates to the achievement gap? We can start with you.
Yeah, I believe there's an overemphasis on test scores. As far as measuring the achievement of the students that we work with in the Closing the Achievement Gap program, we like to really focus on their development of a social and emotional learning competencies, helping them develop better self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship, skill building, as well as responsible decision making. And in doing that, that will assist them in being much more successful in dealing in their learning environments with their peers, with the teachers, administrators, and individuals of that nature. So those are what we consider to be the most important things that need to be developed for our boys in order for them to be successful in any kind of environment.
And I would have to agree with my colleague here and say that there are multiple data points to determine whether a student has mastered material or is ready for the real world. And I think that looking at not only the social and emotional status of students, but also the academic, as well as the students who participate in service. And that's one area that we try to focus on, or we strive to focus on in Shaker Schools, being an International Baccalaureate district, that our students become selfless adults, students who are able to go out into the world and be caring and to speak up. Earlier today I was speaking to one of the youth council members, and I said that your voice is power. And I think that that is a characteristic that young people need to leave our schools with, understanding that you have to use your voice, and that your voice is extremely powerful. And that is something that cannot be measured on a state assessment. And I also think that, when you're looking at the whole child and you're looking at making sure that students not only have the academic foundation, but that they're able to make good decisions when they go out into the world, that they're able to collaborate with other people, and that they're able to, make the best choices for themselves. And these are all things that, a state assessment, in my eyes, cannot measure. And I hope that we will continue to talk with our communities, and that's our parents as well as our students and our teachers, and to get them to use their voices to tell the state that one state assessment should not define how successful our schools are.
So I'm in the same company, very much like-minded educators here. The mission of our schools is to develop lifelong learners and spirited citizens. And those are the outcomes that are most important for life success and life satisfaction. And I do feel that assessment is important. It's important to help teachers understand each learner so that the teacher knows how to design instruction to enable that learner to succeed. But state achievement tests do not even accomplish that goal. So a lifelong learner, to me, is someone who knows themselves as a learner, knows how to advocate for themselves as a learner, and does have an adequate level of achievement to pursue their life goals. Spirited citizen, I mean, it's beautiful to see a room filled with young, spirited citizens here today. And that's what we're trying to develop in our school, so that our students are people who see a problem and instead of complaining about it, say, what can I do about it? So we try to give them a powerful voice, even in the small day-to-day things at school, to learn how to identify problems, formulate possible solutions, and help to move their school community forward. So I couldn't agree more that the testing pendulum has swung very far in a negative direction for true education in our schools.
Okay. All right, so touching on testing, what factors do you think test scores play in the role of perpetuating belief that minorities are incapable of succeeding within school? I'll start with you again.
Again, I think we're doing too much testing. As far as the comparison of races and that sort of thing, I know we work with our young men in an effort to try and help them develop the basic fundamentals that they need in order to be successful in testing, whether it be on the state level or in the classroom or what have you. So I think it kind of varies from school district to school district. We were considerably challenged in the Cleveland School District as opposed to some of the other school districts in being able to adequately prepare our students in order to do well on those standardized tests. But again, I think it's overemphasis.
I would say it's having a really negative impact. In particular, when you look at the state assessments and you're able to compare them to school districts and look at their particular poverty area levels, and when you look at all of our districts throughout the state, you'll see that the highest poverty schools have the lowest grades on the state assessment. And what that does is that sends a message, unfortunately, to our state that if you are poor, that you are unsuccessful. And that is something that I think we need to address, because it's an underlying message that unfortunately some of our young people are internalizing, and they're feeling as if they're not smart enough or good enough. And there are some biases that are to many of the tests that are out there that are being used. You think if you take a student from a low income background or an impoverished community, and they may not have had certain experiences in their particular community or in their lives, and then you have questions on the exam that talk about things that they just don't do typically, that question may not resonate with them, and they may get it incorrectly, or they may answer it incorrectly because they can't relate to the particular question. I think we need to make sure that our tests, if we're going to use them, that they are that they're unbiased, that we are using multiple ways for kids to demonstrate their mastery or understanding of the material, because every child learns in a different way. And until we can do that, we're going to continue to have this perpetual negative connotation around assessments and poverty, which unfortunately, well, fortunately, I don't agree with.
Again, I'm in full agreement. There are so many factors that influence how a child will do on a standardized test. And if you look at the state report cards for schools and you see many, many, many different measurements, you might think there's a lot of different assessments that are being used to generate those, and there's not. There's one assessment, there is one moment in time, and we just know that that 2.5 hours on that test does not in any way capture all the ways that a student should be able to have to demonstrate what their achievement is. Now, academic achievement is important to life success, but we can't necessarily accept that that number tells us anything important about that student other than what they did at that one moment in time. We don't know anything about the circumstances that that student might have been experiencing right before or during that moment in time. This is another place where, with moving to electronic assessment, the digital divide just plays into the fact that some students from birth have immediate access to all sorts of electronic media, digital, they've got the computers and iPads and everything in their hands as infants, to students who don't have that much experience and access. Well, that can impact how well you're able to just, type answers to questions. And yet, this, the state test, there's no funding to go along with that so that that factor is equalized for all students. Assessment can be very helpful in guiding students to achieve their best, but testing that's used in a punitive way, it's punitive towards schools, it's punitive towards districts, and it's punitive towards individual children, is not helping us to move forward.
All right, so touching on what Dr. Hutchings and Dr. Whitehouse said about income, what factors play into the income education gap, and why do you believe income makes such a large difference on achievement? Let's start with you again.
Well, the more your students or your families make, the better exposure opportunities you're going to have. And as was mentioned by my colleagues here, that expands your opportunities and gives you more vision, and then maybe some of the other students that are going to schools where they get more of those opportunities. Another factor that economic plays a role in is, where you live. And I recently visited Washington, D.C. at a forum that focused on terms they called ACEs, or Adverse Childhood Experiences, which brought into play the household income, trauma that you might experience in your household or in your community as a result of being exposed to incarceration, being exposed to different types of abuse, be it in the form of substance abuse, physical, sexual, emotional kinds of abuse. So poverty is going to bring you in closer contact with those types of traumatic experiences, which I think then adversely affect your ability in life as well as in the classroom.
And I would have to agree with that. I think that when you look at income levels, it's not an even playing field. Everyone knows that the more money you have, the more opportunities you're able to have and the more access you have. And that's whether it's access to experiences or access to health care or access to benefits that you need in order to survive. So from the moment a child is born, if you are born into a low-income family, you're going to have some additional challenges from the moment you're brought into the world. Now, it doesn't mean that you can never achieve, but it does mean that we're going to have to begin to advocate when we talk about communities and economic development. We're going to have to start using our voices to advocate to make sure that people who are born into poverty, that they have the supports and that they have the exposure and that they have the resources that they need to be able to have an opportunity to be successful in this country.
I think certainly in agreement. The other thing that this brings is just the amount of stress, the daily stress. And we all know that when we're under stress about something, we cannot optimally function. So families that live in poverty just have daily stressors that they're trying to cope with. Sometimes when I hear of the circumstances of children that attend our schools, I don't know how they get up and go to school every day. How can they come and concentrate? There's also the problem of lead exposure for children, particularly in Cleveland. And there's just so many stressors that poverty brings to a family. And then I feel that we need to give children an equal chance. We just need to commit the resources. How much money is committed to your education should not depend on the community that your parents can afford to live in. The value of a child should not be one value if you live in Beechwood and a completely different value if you happen to be born to a family that lives in Cleveland. We need to get serious about equitable funding and equitable opportunities in education. And I'm very pleased to say that Cleveland is making an emphasis on early childhood education, because the achievement gap does not start when children enter kindergarten. The achievement gap starts even, you said when they're born, before they're born, with access to good quality prenatal care, helping parents learn how to be effective parents, making sure the child has access to early learning experiences. There's so much data on children who are born into poverty, just the number of words that they hear in conversation and their vocabularies are vastly different than children who are born into more affluent circumstances. That takes time to remedy, and you need to have early learning experiences, quality preschool experiences, because otherwise you enter kindergarten already with a huge preparation gap. And then you're asking children who have all of these stressors to not only learn a year's worth of academics in a year's time, but get catch-up growth. So learn more than you're expecting the average student to learn. And we're trying to ask all of that of them, when there's so many difficult circumstances that they're dealing with day to day. I will say that one of the innovations of our school is to reject age-based grade levels and to reject the idea that we should give everyone the same amount of time and expect them to all learn the same things. Children need more time. If they enter school without a solid foundation for future learning, we need to give them the time to acquire that foundation so that they can be successful from that point on. So this lockstep notion of age-based grade levels can be detrimental to children because that creates a bell curve of outcomes. And if you're at the low end of that bell curve, it's very hard to move to a different position.
All right, so going off of that, with a growing preparation curve or gap, what inadequacies in the current approach have led to such little progress being made, and how should schools and communities change their approaches to better counteract the problem?
Well, in our district, and we were talking earlier, I would really like to see a true middle school environment be established, as opposed to what we have now is the K through 8 buildings. I know we program I work or help direct. Our initial focus was primarily on males at the 9th grade level, but we soon realized that we needed to be reaching much farther back in an effort to try and help our students be successful. So in the 9 high schools where I have coordinators that are working primarily with the 9th graders, we also adopt a K through 8 building in an effort to try and wrap our arms around the 7th and 8th grade males that we hope to see the following years as a 9th grader. And having come from a true middle school experience, I think they're put at such a disadvantage because they're in a elementary school from the time they're in kindergarten or pre-kindergarten through the 8th grade, and then in the 9th grade, they're in high school. And that's kind of traumatic. It was traumatic for me going from 6th grade to the 7th and 8th grade, having to deal with lockers and changing classes and encountering new individuals that I'd never seen before. So I can imagine the kind of pressure it puts on some of our guys coming out of an elementary school environment where they're led around all day long, and then they go to high school and they're on their own, And some of them make that transition okay. Others feel, every 45, 50 minutes is recess because they're released from a class, and now you got to get to that next class with the right tools and that sort of thing, and be ready to prepare yourself. So, that's one of the areas that I would, if I had the wand, I would change it and give them that opportunity. The other thing that is difficult is not having as many of the extracurricular activities that they should have. One big one is music and arts. I regret that the bands, we don't have the bands in our district like I would like to see them, and as I see in other school districts. So, those extracurricular activities and that preliminary build up to going on to that secondary level is something I think is vitally important and missing.
So yeah, I think that I can agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I think we also need to try to change the mindset of our society. And what I mean by that is, sometimes you hear if you make intentional efforts to help a certain group, you're taking away from another group. And I think that mentality causes us and forces many school districts to not be courageous enough to do whatever it takes to narrow this achievement gap and the opportunity gap. So it is going to take us, some time to get people to understand the sense of urgency and the need for us to have equitable resources for students who may enter school or enter this whole educational journey behind, and knowing that everyone's going to benefit by doing this. You're not going to lose anything by getting on board and saying this is the best thing for all kids.
I'll just briefly say 2 innovations that we have in our schools that I think help to close this achievement gap. One is progress based on mastery. So not moving on just because you've put in 9 months of time, but moving on to the next level when you have mastered what comes first. So the gap gets bigger and bigger if you don't take the time to let students master material before moving on. And I will put in a plug for intergenerational. So at our schools, we not only have our young learners, but we have many, many people from the community who participate with the children as mentors, as co-learners. In a school of 250 children, we had 300 community members who participated either in school programs or our children going to long-term care programs. So I'm one of the baby boomers, and there is a huge source of pretty free labor out there to help students in our school to form one-on-one mentoring relationships. And our first school was 15 years old this past year, and we have a long track record on those dreaded state tests of our children performing very well. And part of it certainly is the added support that adults and older adults, particularly from our community, can bring to the schools. So get those baby boomers into the schools and get them involved in helping to help children move forward in their learning.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. I'm going to turn it over to Autumn Lilly for the question and answer intro.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Autumn Lilly Faithwalker, and I'm a third-year member of the Youth Forum Council. Today, we've been enjoying a Youth Forum panel discussion on the academic achievement gap, featuring George Golden, the program director of Closing the Achievement Gap in the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, Gregory C. Hutchings, Jr., the superintendent of the Shaker Heights City School District, and Dr. Cathy Whitehouse, the co-founder and former principal of the Intergenerational Schools K-8. We're about to begin the audience Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone: City Club members, guests, students, or those of you joining us via our webcast. We ask that your questions be brief, to the point, and real questions. If you're joining us via webcast and would like to ask a question, tweet your question at City Club Youth, and we'll ask as time allows. Today's forum is also sponsored by AT&T, and we thank you for your support. We have two members holding microphones, one back here and one right here. So first question, please. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I was just interested, in your experience, how do immigrant students who have come here from other countries who are struggling to master the English language, how are they doing?
Anyone can take this one.
Well, I would say that we have, we call English language learners. So we have ELL specialists and support teachers within our district to help students who are coming to the United States of America from a different country, to assist them with assimilating into the culture as well as learning the language. And we do believe in making sure that students have access to those same opportunities that all of our current students have, and that's in regards to the arts and making sure that they are engaged in different activities, extracurricular activities that we offer within the school district. So we are seeing progress with many of our students. Now, we have a small population of ELL in Shaker Heights. Many of our ELL students, not all, but many of them were in their native countries in very good schools. They just don't know the English language. So it's a matter of them learning the English language, and they pretty much catch on really quickly. So we've been really fortunate to work with our kids and assimilating them.
We don't have a very large population. Our Near West Intergenerational School does have about a third Hispanic students, but not many of them are ELL, but not all of them. And there, what we do try to do is really incorporate the culture to make sure that we honor the multicultural nature of that school in particular. But other than that, we do provide the same types of ELL support services to the extent that we can.
Good afternoon. My name is Osa Aragon, and I'm a junior at Shaker Heights High School. My question is in regards to the state's district evaluations. What qualities would you like to see measured that would give a more holistic and accurate depiction of our schools?
Well said. I love it. So first off, let me just say thank you for the question, Osei, one of our students. And you know, one thing, you know, and I'm sure Osei, she's probably familiar with this, but in Shaker Heights, we have a publication which we call Measuring What Matters. And it focuses on not only the academic piece, but also the social, the emotional, the experiences that students have, whether it's international travel, whether it's service hours that they complete before they leave Shaker schools, whether it's the fact that, you know, all of our students in 5th and 6th grade, they're required to play an instrument in Shaker Heights. They're required to take swimming in Shaker Heights. They all learn Mandarin Chinese starting in 1st grade until 5th grade, and then they have 6 other world language options. I think those are things that right now are not measured on a state assessment, and I think that those are the holistic, you know, qualities that I think are very important to determine whether a student is prepared or ready for the world. I also will say that, you know, right now with the state assessment, because when we get the data back from our state assessment, teachers are not able to make informed decisions with that data because it's either the kids are no longer with you or they've been held up and they're, you know, and they give different release dates, or we have to send it back for corrections. Because teachers aren't able to make informed decisions, it's really not a good tool for educators to progress monitor our kids. So I think that if we had a measurement or an assessment that allowed us to, you know, maybe do kind of like check-ins throughout the year and to be able to make informed decisions would be a lot more helpful.
My name is Camille Seals. I'm the director of the Aspire program at Hathaway Brown School. And my question is sort of to Mr. Golden, but anybody could answer. You talked about the program in the Cleveland Metropolitan School District that particularly focuses on the issues of young men. And I'm curious about what programming is being offered to support the young ladies in the district. And if you don't have a similar program in Shaker Heights, what do you see sort of as the trends in terms of needs for young women, and how are your districts addressing those?
We are, I mentioned before that I just had gone to DC, and one of the reasons we went there was based on moving forward in creating more programming for our young ladies. We're kind of at the threshold of developing work groups in order to evaluate that and see how we can you know, create the program like we did for the young men as far as CTAG is concerned. So, you know, we know there's a need, and we're in the midst of trying to move forward and bring it to fruition. So that's where we are right now. We're looking into it.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Karras, and I'm the Cleveland Metropolitan School District Advanced Placement Coordinator in High School Gifted. And in listening to Mr. Golden's comment about the K-8 buildings, I also serve on a committee that is trying to improve middle schools. And that is essentially, and I'm seeing lots of young people shake their heads about the K-8 buildings and how in certain ways it constrains young people from being able to mature and transition successfully into high school. Given that, I was wondering what the panel thinks could be a potential solution or a way to remedy the problem, so that even in terms of having acceleration for our best and brightest 7th and 8th grade students, having just one classroom per each grade level in a building kind of limits acceleration from occurring as well. So I was wondering if you could give a little insight or a little thought about what type of changes could be made in order to reverse this very critical issue?
Well, you know, in our district, there's a lot of thematic schools and innovative schools that are being created. You know, and my question is why don't we make the move to create a traditional middle school building and run it, you know, as a pilot, see how it goes, and then take it from there. I mean, we're hitting other areas with regards to the types of thematic schools that we have. So that, you know, that would be, you know, my recommendation, you know, to give one building a chance to kind of flourish in that theme and see how it goes.
We had just talked about this right before we came in. You know, if you're unable to purchase additional buildings for new middle schools, I think that you can have schools within a school. And I think that, you know, it's really about how you structure the day and you structure the actual atmosphere for students. And I had shared when I was a principal in Nashville, Tennessee, the schools, middle schools were 5th grade through 8th grade. And the 5th and 6th grade operated differently than the 7th and 8th grade. So 5th and 6th grade was more like an elementary school setting. They had 2 teachers that they went right next door from class to class. Half of the morning they were in one class, the afternoon they were in another class. And then when you went up to the 2nd and 3rd floor where 7th and 8th grade was located, they had lockers, they had 5 teachers, they had accelerated options. And we were able to open, you know, what we provided more access to fill our classrooms so they wouldn't have to go to the high school to take those upper level courses or those accelerated courses. And I think that could be a solution that we can use, you know, as well.
Could I just ask as a follow-up, were those classes in the 5 to 8 buildings, were there multiple 5th grade, multiple 6th, multiple, because then that opens the door to allow for exactly what you're talking
Yes.
about, particularly if Mr. Golden works to the charge of trying to promote the middle school that we've been piloting.
Yeah, so they were multiple grade levels.
If I can just add, because our schools are K-8 and they're small, and our students do quite well when they go on to high school. But what we do is our oldest students, we call them senior cluster because it's multi-age, they have a lot of responsibility at the school. So they are expected to serve as leaders and role models for the younger students. They're not separated out so that they're just, you know, with their 7th and 8th graders. They interact with the younger students, and their interactions both and responsibilities for their choices in the eyes of the younger students are made very explicit to them, and they step up to it. They also have a lot of time with the senior citizens who are mentors at the school, and again, that brings out the best in them. So I do think within a K-8 model, you can build in that increasing level of responsibility and leadership and being a role model, you know, for the rest of the school to help with that.
Do you want me to take it? She has to hold it. My name's Holly Harris-Spain. I'm president of the Northeast Ohio Council for Higher Education. And Dr. Hutchings, I want to follow up on a question or a comment that you made about ongoing assessment. In higher education, increasingly over the last, I would say, 7 to 8 years, most of our institutions of higher learning, community colleges, four-year public, four-year private, we use predictive analytic tools, Starfish, EAB being 2 of the major ones in Northeast Ohio. Do the primary, secondary schools, especially for the population that you're talking about, do you know if predictive analytic tools to help monitor and assess and then create intrusive intervention is being utilized? And that's question 1. 2, if it is, do you know of any initiatives where those tools then follow the student in the data with the student as they progress from high school into college? Sorry to be such a mouthful.
Yeah. So yes, I think that what we're using within our district now is MAP. And MAP, and I wish I knew what the acronym stood for. I can't remember it right now, but it's MAP assessments. And what it does is it allows us, it predicts where students are in regards to that particular year. It also predicts how students will do on the ACT. It provides a prediction of whether students are college or career ready. And these are assessments that are administered 2 to 3 times per year, every year, beginning in 3rd grade right now. The goal is for us to start this kindergarten through 12th grade, and that's a part of our 5-year strategic plan. We do not currently have a data warehouse, but we are in the process of building a system so that students' data follows them from elementary through middle school through high school, and the goal is for it to keep going on to higher education. I think that it would be very helpful, not just for Shaker schools, but I think high schools and school districts across the country. We need to work more, collaborate more with higher education and have discussions around what are our graduates coming to your schools, what deficits do they have when they enter, and also what are some of the things that are really good that they're doing when they come into the schools. But we need to have that two-way communication that happens in pockets, but I don't think that we really set intentional efforts or make intentional efforts to have a deeper discussion around that matriculation from secondary to post-secondary education.
That question could go to anyone, it's just Dr. Hutchings brought it up, but thank you.
All right, sorry. I'm Gus Mahoney. I'm a senior at Shaker Heights High School along with OSA. So we've talked a lot about the classroom and bridging the achievement gap within academic settings, but I think that something that's also really important within school settings is extracurriculars. And I'm very familiar with the extracurricular culture at Shaker, where Dr. Hutchings is the superintendent. But I was just wondering if in your districts you have any initiatives to encourage low socioeconomic status or minority students to participate in extracurriculars, and maybe what do you feel is the role of extracurriculars in bridging the achievement gap?
Well, I think it's extracurriculars gives you the opportunity to, diversify your, just your life experiences, and it helps develop a foundation for as you grow older. Some of the things that you'll engage in as you grow older. As I indicated, I don't think there are enough enough of a variety of extracurricular activities in our district. And I don't know why that is. But I think our students could benefit tremendously by there being more opportunities for them to do a variety of different things. And as part of the CTAG program, what we do is try to compensate by providing the students that we work with a variety of different experiences that they don't normally encounter. So again, it kind of goes back to the focus of what it is that we're really trying to do for our students. But I agree that extracurricular activities is a needed supplement for the academic experience that students should be getting.
I would just like to add to that this is another equity issue, that extracurriculars takes money, and public charter schools receive about 60% of the funding of regular district schools. So we do as much as we can, but in order to provide extracurriculars, we try to collaborate with community organizations to bring in, we do gardening, we've done theater, we've done sports, but we have to find community partners that we can make our buildings available, and they help to provide those. But I do also think that one of the problems with testing is that it's not the extracurriculars, but it's the curriculars that can become limited. So keeping art and music, and I would also put in a plug for physical education daily. Our students need to move, they need to get outside, and a lot of times, because those are not tested subjects, those things are taken out of the curriculars. And some schools can bring it in through the extracurriculars, and some schools have a harder time doing that because of the lack of funding.
This is a great panel. My name is Merle Johnson. I taught in Cleveland for 40 years. And one of the frustrations that teachers experience is providing after-school opportunities for students and students not showing up. So my question is, what are some of the responsibilities that students have in school and out of school in being able to work toward closing that achievement gap?
That's a good question. I do think that it's important for us to ask the students what their interests are, because that's something where we sometimes assume, and I'm Generation X, but we sometimes assume what our students want, and we say, well, we have it, and we offer this, and we offer that, and no one shows up, and it's not really what they are interested in. So I think it's important for us to do some form of needs assessment, for us to build that relationship with our young people, so we know what are their interests, or what their interests are. And then I also think when we talk about, what can students do, we need to empower them. The more we empower our young people, like I said before, your voice is power. The more we give you, we have conversations about what you're learning in school. We ask, our students questions, so those questioning techniques or inquiry. I think that all of those things are going to help us in regards to narrowing this achievement gap, because it is definitely going to take young people, businesses, politicians, parents, communities, everybody. It's all hands on deck for us to genuinely narrow this achievement gap and be able to sustain it over time.
I think you can also, you have to set expectations that when you commit to participating in something, it's a commitment. And that's part of that, setting high expectations for children, but also recognizing that families who live in poverty, there may be barriers to regular participation in extracurricular activities that can be as basic as transportation, or someone needs to be home to watch the younger siblings because the parents got to go off to, their shift work job. So I do think you can, put responsibility appropriately on the student, but also recognize that we may have to do something to help them overcome barriers that are beyond their individual ability to control.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It's, for our program, one of the hardest things is to get our guys to participate in after-school activities. And for some of the reasons that were stated there. Again, I go back to sometimes the kind of environments that, my guys come from. Staying after school is not the most healthy thing for them. So they need to get home as quickly as they possibly can. But I think a much earlier and consistent introduction of after-school programming that they are interested in, and that being, they stick with that consistently, will then build upon them being more receptive to after-school programming as they just kind of matriculate through the lower grades up through the higher level grades.
I just wanted to make one quick comment before we go to the next question. I think it's important too for schools to understand that you can provide some of those extracurriculars during the school day. And what I mean by that is you can apply real life situations or experiences into the curriculum. You can have students, be innovative and be a part of whether it's clubs or sports during the school day, whether it's through physical activity like PE or through the courses that you offer. But there are some ways that you can give kids access and get them engaged when we know we have them, so that they get that exposure. And I think that's another creative way of trying to get them engaged.
My name is Jaquad Davis Thomas. I'm from Cleveland School of the Arts. I'm a senior. You guys said that the ACT and SATs aren't really accurate representations of how students perform, and I was wondering how you would kind of interpret how their levels are by any other means besides testing.
So the ACT and SAT, I don't recall saying what you just said, but I do recall saying the state assessments are not a true demonstration of mastery of students. But what I will say about the ACT and SAT, unfortunately, and we have the higher education people in here, officials in here, that is what's used as one measurement. It's not all, but it's one measurement to get into higher education. Your ACT score, your SAT scores, for most colleges and universities, not all, but for most colleges and universities. So what I will say to that is, I think it is important for us in the K-12 sector, pre-K-12 sector, that we provide supports to prepare you to take those courses, to take those assessments. And the state now is allowing for all students to take the ACT, to kind of take it in advance before it counts, which I think is going to be beneficial, because you can have, in your 10th grade year, you can take this assessment, you can sit down, talk with your counselor, talk with your teachers about some areas that you may need to work on, and then you can retake it your junior year when it's going to count towards what college or university you're going to.
I'd like to just add to that, and I don't deal with ACT, SATs, we only go up to grade 8 in our schools. But tests are part of life. And if you go on in education, you have to take tests. You have to take tests to get into schools, to graduate from schools. So testing in and of itself is not necessarily bad. It's how those scores are used. So if test scores are used to help point the way towards improvement in education, that's fine. Even the state test scores, if they could be used in that way, which they can't because we don't even get the information in time to make any meaningful use of it, but to use them to grade schools and children and to punish schools and children is not an appropriate use of that information. It's one piece of data. It can be useful in some ways, but not the way it's being used now.
And to kind of piggyback on what Merle was talking about in reference to student responsibility, as a student, it's your responsibility to, find out what this test is about and expose yourself to as a variety of information and experiences as you possibly can in order to be better prepared for that. And that's all about, being a student and wanting to learn. The responsibility too falls back on the student, knowing full well, because it's not a secret what's on the test. You know what's coming down the pipe. So handle it.
Hello everyone, my name is Teolo Orisanya. I'm a junior in high school and the secretary of the Youth Forum Council. Today at the City Club, we have been enjoying a Youth Forum panel discussion featuring George Golden, program director for Cleveland's Closing the Achievement Gap program, Cathy Whitehouse, the former principal and founder of the Intergenerational School, and Dr. Gregory Hutchings Jr., superintendent of Shaker Heights Schools. As part of our Youth Forum sponsored by AT&T, we appreciate your continued support. Additionally, we welcome students from Andrews Osborne Academy, Cleveland School of the Arts, Hathaway Brown, Jane Addams Business Career Center, James Ford Rhodes High School, John Marshall High School, Lutheran West High School, and Shaker Heights High School. And that brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskin Family Fund, with additional funding from Cleveland State University, Robert Conrad, and the Payne Fund.